Okay, so good morning to everyone. Now, in the last class, we have seen about that how by extending the thread class, we will able to the thread creation. We will see that how extending the thread class we have done that. And another approach that is using the implementing the runnable interface also, we can create the thread. Now today we will see first about that how implementing the runnable interface, the thread creation can happen. Now here you see that we have used a class T1. This T1 is our own thread class. This T1 is our own thread class. And this thread class is implements because interface, we know that if there is an interface, if a class implements that interface, so that's why we are implementing an interface. That's why we have used this keyword implements. And then this is the runnable interface. So this is a predefined interface that is present in Java, that is runnable. So class T1 implements runnable. That means our own thread class, the own thread class, user defined thread class is implementing the runnable interface. Now inside of it, you see inside of it we have used public void run. So the run method is used, and inside this run method it is written system.out.println thread T1 as a statement. This will be printed. So the run method will print the statement thread T1. The next inside the main, this is the public static void main string args, or you can use any of its. So string A we have used here, and inside of it you see we have created the object of our own thread class, that is T1 object1 equal to new T1. That means we have created our own thread class object. Our own thread class object we have created inside the main. Now after that, you see we have used thread T equal to new thread. Now it is what it is making the, we are making the object of the predefined thread class. Now you will see that in the previous example we have seen there is nothing such thing that we have to create the predefined thread class object. Because why? We have, in that case, we have directly used the predefined thread class as an inheritance concept. So as an inheritance concept, the predefined thread class, this predefined thread class will be automatically, we are extending that predefined thread class. So inside of it, instance variable and method will automatically came here, will automatically came inside our thread class. But here we are not using the predefined thread class. We are implementing that runnable interface. So that's why we have used here that if we want to use the predefined thread class, then we have to create the object here, predefined thread class object. But in the previous example, we have seen that there is no such condition that we have to create the predefined thread class object, because in that case we are extending that predefined thread class. But here we are not using any such concept. So that's why we have to create predefined thread class object inside our program. Now you will say that why this is necessary, that we have to create the predefined thread class object here. Now the start method, this start method only reside in the predefined thread class. The start method only available in the predefined thread class. This start method is not available in the runnable interface. This start method is not present in the runnable interface. Now, if we do not create this thread class object, predefined thread class object, then we cannot use the start method, because the start method is not present in this runnable interface. So if we want to use the start method, that means we have to create predefined thread class object. So that's why we have created the predefined thread class object, like we by thread t equal to new thread, and as a parameter you see we are passing our own thread class object as a parameter here, that thread t equal to new thread, and as a parameter you see we are passing obj1. Now this obj1 is which object? Whose object is this obj1? obj1 is the object of our thread class which is created. So that's why we have passing the object as a parameter here, and after that you see with the object of the predefined thread class object we are calling the start method. If we do not create the object of predefined thread class here, that means let's say we do not use this statement here, then it will not be possible because the start method is not present in this runnable interface. Now if we want to use the start method, then we have to create here the thread class object, or either we have to use extend thread class. That is the previous example we have seen, that by extending the thread class. Now if we extend the predefined thread class, in that time automatically inside of it the method that is present will automatically present here because it is extending now. So if we do not use that, we implement runnable interface, then using the start method we have to keep in mind that we have to create the thread class object, and as a parameter of it we have to pass our own thread class object. Then with the predefined thread class object which we have created, using that we will call the start method. So that's how, this is the basic difference. This is the basic difference using the predefined thread class and the runnable interface. So that's, it is written that basic difference: by extending thread class we can directly call the start method, whereas to call the start method in runnable interface we have to create an object. We have to create an object of the thread class and pass the reference of our thread class or the object of our thread class in the reference of the original thread class. That is why this object one we have passed in here, and this object one will be by the hold by this object t will hold this object one value, and then we can call the start method. So this is the basic difference. This is the basic difference if we use by implementing the runnable interface. These things we have to do. Okay, it is clear. It is clear to everyone.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now we will see that in the states of the life cycle of a thread, we have seen that the stop method, the using of the stop method. So using of the stop method is, we have known that from newborn state, we can use stop method to go in the dead state. From runnable or running state, we use stop method to go to the dead state or block state. If the thread is in block state, from there also, if it execute the stop method, it will go to the dead state. So stop method is what? Using of the stop method, we directly kills the thread. We say that we kill the thread on execution. Now through program we will see that how it can be done. Let's say we have a class A, that this is our user defined thread class, which is extending the predefined thread class, and inside of it we have used public void run. So run method is used inside it, and this run method is doing what? The thread is doing that for int I equal to 1, I less than 5, I plus plus. That means I value will be incremented. I value will be shown like that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like this it will be printed. So that's why we have used a for loop, and inside the for loop we have defined that I equal to 1, and this loop will be executed until I less than equal to 5, and the I value will get incremented. Now inside this for loop we have used if I equal to 2. That means if the I value become 2, then stop method will be called. That means if I value will be 2, then the stop method will be called. And after that we have written system.out.println a plus I. That means a value, that this our I value will be shown here. That means I value will be incremented and it will be printed. But if the I value is 2, then the stop method will be called. Okay, so inside the main, what we will do, inside the main we will create this our own thread class object. So that is what we have done, that inside the main what we have done, our own thread class object, that is a equal to new a, that means own thread class object we have created. So when we will create this own thread class object, and using that, you see a dot start, we have used a dot start. So start method, that means through our own thread class object we have calling the start method. So we have know that when the start method will be called, that means when it will be start method will be called, that our executions will be started. So start method call means the thread will go to the running or runnable state. Now we are assuming that our thread is in runnable state, running state, sorry, the thread is in our running state. So running state means run method will be called. That means the processor will be allocated now to our thread. The processor will be allocated to our thread for execution. That means this class will be executed now, because inside this the run method is present. So when this run method, the CPU is allocated here. So when this CPU will be allocated, that means this will be executed. So first for int I equal to 1. So okay, yes, 1 is less than 5. Okay, that means 1 is less than 5. So if 1 equal to 2, not 1 equal to 2, so system.out.println plus I, that means the first a value will be printed, that is a equal to a equal to 1. So this will be printed. Then the I will be increment, and I value will incrementing, the I value will be now 2. So 2 is less than 5, yes. So 2 is less than 5 means if it will be check here in the if condition, if 2 equal to 2, yes, 2 equal to 2, that means the stop method will be called. Now when this stop method will be called, that means the execution of the thread will killed. So that means after that no I value will be printed, because using the stop method we are doing what, we are killing the thread, because that's why the next value will not also be not shown there. So after when the value will be 2 equal to 2, so the stop method will directly call the stop method. So stop method will do what, it will kill the thread. That means now which thread is running in our program, the class A, this is our thread, and using that object we are calling the start method. So that means execution of the A will be stopped, execution of the A will be stopped. So the next values of I will not be printed here, because this will be, execution of this will be stopped. So only A1 will be printed, but other values will not print. So like that the stop method is used. Then stop method, basically if the thread is running, runnable or in the ready state, then calling the stop method, thread goes to the dead state. So that means we are killing the thread. So that's why here the no value will be printed after that. Okay, it is clear. It is clear.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, the other method we will see. Now, there is another three methods that is present in the thread, that is alive, join method, and yield method. Now, is alive method do what? Is alive method says that our thread is alive or not. This status is given by the is alive method, that the thread we are using, that thread is alive or not. It is this method, is alive method, says that. So is alive method test if a thread is alive. Now if a thread is alive, then it will return true. If it is alive, then it will return true. But if it is not alive, that means it will return false. So is alive method test whether our thread is alive or not. If it is alive, then the value will be in the boolean form. That means true false condition. So if it is alive, then it will return true, otherwise it will return false. And the join method do what? Join method is basically waits for a thread to die. It causes current running thread to stop executing until the thread it joins complete its task. Now the meaning of this is what? Let's see an example. That here you see we have T1 thread and T2. These two threads, let's say in our program, these two threads are present, T1 and T2. Let's say T1 and T2, T1 thread, between them T1 thread use join method, executes the join method. So when it will execute the join method, that means the T2 thread, that is another thread that is running, will stop its execution. Means its execution will be paused for some time. Because if T2 executes join method, the T1 executes join method, then the other threads that is running will its execution will be paused. Now, how many times this execution, how much time this execution will be paused? This executions will be paused until T1 thread completes its task. That means if T1 thread here, T1 and T2, two threads are present. So T1 executes join method. That means T1 executions will be continued, and the other thread T2, its execution will be paused. Now, how much time this execution will be paused? It will pause until T1 completes its task. Until T1 completes its task, T2 will be paused. So when T1 will complete its execution, then after that T2 will start. So that is why using the join method. So basically the simple words we can say that the thread who initiate the join will execute, and other threads will have to wait until the thread which executes join will completes its task. Then after, the other threads will run there, other threads will start its execution. This is the join method, the functions of the join method. Now, the general format of the is alive method is we'll write like that: public, final, boolean, is alive. Now, public means what? It is access modifier we have used, that we can access this method from anywhere outside of the class. We can also able to access that method. That's why we have used public. And we want to access this method from outside of the class. That's why we always declare this method as a public, so we can access from anywhere. Now, if a final is used before a method, that means that method cannot be overridden. That method cannot be overridden. So that's why we use here, this method cannot be overridden. So that's why we have used final before the method. And Boolean. Now isAlive method return what? True or false. It will say if the thread is active, then true will be, it will return true. And if it is, the thread is not active, then it will return false. So we are getting the output as a true or false. So that means it is what? It is the Boolean form. So return type will be what? Return type of this method will be Boolean. So that's why we have used Boolean here. And this is the method. So the general format of the isAlive method will be like that. Public final Boolean isAlive. And this is the reason we have used here public, then final, then Boolean, then the method name isAlive. And each of these keywords specifies something. That is what I have explained, that why we will use the public before this method, final before this method, and the Boolean is the return type, because the output we will get as a true or false condition. So true or false condition means in the Boolean form. So our return type of the functions will be Boolean. That's why we have used here Boolean. Now we will see example. That how this method should be used in the program. Now let's say this is a class. This is our thread class A. This is our thread class, which is extends or extending. We can say this is extending the predefined thread class, which is present in the Java. This predefined thread class is extending by our own thread class. And inside of our own thread class, we have used run method. So if we do not use the run method, that means our thread will not execute. So that's why we have used public void run. And inside of it, you have seen we have used system.out.println status, and it will print the isAlive. So isAlive method, here you can see we have printing the value of the isAlive method. Okay, it is one thread. Now in the main, you see, now this is the main function. This is our main public static void main. And inside of the main, what we are doing, inside of our main, we are creating our own thread class object. That is how we are creating class A, small a equal to new A. That means this small a is what? This is the object. This is the object of our thread class, of our own thread class. So our own thread class object we are creating inside the main. Now after that, using that object, we are calling the start method. Now this object is what? This object is associated with our own thread class. That means the start method will be checked where? The start method will be checked in our own thread class. So here in the class A, inside the class A, the start method will be checked. But here you see the start method is not present in our class A. So the method definition is not present. Now, if the method definition is not present, then where we will check that? We will check in its immediate parent. Now, our own thread class, that is class A's immediate parent is what? Immediate parent is our predefined thread class, which is present in Java. That is this thread class. Now, inside the thread class, the start method is present. The start method is present in this. So that means the start method will be called, and with whom object it is called? With class A's object. The class A's object we are calling the start method. So that means class A thread will be start execution, and after that the run method will be called, because if the start method execute, then after start method we know the start method will initiate the run method. So the run method will execute, and when this run method will execute, it will print status is alive. So that means what will here we will print? It will print first status, that is true. The status, it is true. Now why the true will be printed? because here in which isAlive method is checking where? isAlive method is checking that our class A thread is running or not. Yes, our class A thread is running. That's why our run method execute. So it will first it will show status equal to true, because isAlive method will check where? isAlive method will check that the thread which is currently running is in our, it is executing or not. Yes, and it is active or not, or we can say it is not dead, it is active, or it is present or not. Yes, it is present. That's why this method is printed. So that's why it will show that the status as the true. So that's why it will show the status as the true. Now after that the execution will came here. The execution will came, and the next statement is what? System.out.println new status a dot is alive. Now a is whose object? Class A's object. Yes, this class A is executing, so a dot is alive. This is will show also true, because this is the class A's object, and class A's object, it will show that that is why it is executing, and that's why the run method is called. So it will show that the new status as true, because this is active now. So like that the isAlive method works. This isAlive method works, that it show that it is active, that our thread is active or not. And whose object we are calling? We are calling with class A's object. And that means what? We will check whose thread is running or not, whose thread is running. So it is class A's object, so that means class A thread is running or not. It will check that. Yes, that's why the run method execute. So that means in the isAlive method, it will print the status as the true here. So this is the reason, and that's how, this is the example, that how the output is shown using the isAlive method. Okay, clear? समझ में आया सबको? समझ में आया?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So next, the another method which we have seen, that is the join method. Now join method is what? Join method will pause the execution of other threads. That means the particular thread which executes the join method will stop the other thread which is running, its execution will be stopped until the thread which executes the join method completes its execution. After that, the other threads will start running. This is the condition for the join method. Now, join method we always use inside the try catch block. Join method we always write inside the try catch block. Now that means it can throw exception. So this statement can throw exception. We know that the particular statement which can throw exception, we write inside the try catch block. So this is the thing you have to remember, that the join method, the method join, we will always write inside the main try catch block. Now we know that in our execution or in our program, the first thread which always run is the main thread, because public static void main, it will run. So when the main method will run, then that time that means the main thread will start execution. So if no thread is present, then only the main thread will execute. We know that the always the main thread will execute, because public static void main, when we start the execution of a program, public static void main, so when we will execute that, that means the main thread will start execution. So let's see through an example that what it defines. Let's say we have used class A extends thread. That is the same thing we are using, and inside of it we are using the run method, and here we are using inside the run method system.out.println, and it will print is alive. That means if the thread is alive, it will print true, otherwise it will print false. Okay, so here you see in the main, inside the main, what we have done, inside the main we have created our own thread class object. We have created our own thread class object, that is class A, small a equal to new a, and with this object we are calling the start method. So when the start method will be called, that means it will check inside our user defined thread class that the start method is present or not, but the start method is not present there. So that means in its immediate parent it will be checked. So when this immediate parent will be checked, so immediate parent is predefined thread class, so there the start method is present, so that means the start method will start executing. So when the start method will start executing, it will call what? It will call the run method to execute. So the run method, and inside of this run method, what is shown? Inside of this run method, it is shown that is alive. Is alive. That means the particular thread it is running is alive or not. So that means in that time, it will show first that the status is true, because in that time, this thread is running. So if this thread is running, that means is alive will show true now. So there is no problem now. The status will show because we are running this particular thread. So now we are at this moment, we are running this particular thread. So it will show true. There is no problem for that. But after that, when these statements will execute, then where the execution will go after this statements execution, thus it will go to the particular here. It will go in this position. After executing that, it will go to again from this, that is here. The execution will go inside this. Here again it will return the execution, that after printing true, the execution will again return here in this position. Now when this execution will return here, after that the execution or the control will go where? The control after here, the control will go to the try catch block. The control from here will go to the try catch block. Now inside this try block, we have used the join method, a.join. A.join, that means current thread. The current thread which is running is calling the join method. That means current thread is what? Which current thread is running now? Class A. This is the current thread which is running, and its object, through this object we are calling the join method. That means this current thread will be executing, and the other thread which is executing will have to stop its execution until this current thread completes its execution. Then only the other threads which is paused will again start their execution. So that's why it is calling with the object of this thread class using the join. That means now in our program, what is the other thread present there? We have seen the other thread is the main thread. This will be the thread which will be present there. So that means currently we are saying that our own thread class will run, and the main thread have to stop its execution until our own thread class completes its execution. Then the main thread execution will start. So that's why that is the join. We are saying through join we will stop the executions of the other threads. So it is calling with class A's object. That means class A thread will run and the main thread execution will be stopped. Now after this the exception will be thrown and it will be handled. Then after completing the execution, it will return, the control will again return here. So control, when this control will again return here, Then after that, the statement that is written system.out.println new status a dot is alive. Now here a dot is alive will show what? A dot is alive will show false. Now you will say that why the false will be shown here? Because if you see this system.out.println, this statement is of which thread? Of the which thread it is present? The system.out.println is of the main thread. Now, when this statement will execute, when the thread class A thread will completes its execution, then only the main thread will start executing, and then this statements will print. Now that means what? Thread A's execution is completed, then only this statement will be print, because in that time the main thread will run. So that means inside of it, what it is mentioned? A dot is alive. So that means A dot. Now currently when these statements will execute, when the class A will complete its execution. So that's why here we are using that class A's object and we are calling isAlive method. So here that's why it is said false. So currently it will show false here. So this is the reason. This is the reason we use the join method. That first the control will goes from a thread class start, then start calls the run method, and then the control come and goes inside the try. Then the try will use the join occurred, and through this join the statement of the main thread is paused. That is the statement of the main thread. So it will be paused, and after the thread completes its execution, the main thread statements will be printed. But inside of it we have mentioned a dot is alive. Now A is of the object of class A, so A is of the object of class A, but already its execution is completed, so that's why it will show the false. Okay, clear? समझ में आया?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this is the is alive and join method. Today there is not so much time present, so that's why I'm not able to discuss the another method, that is the yield method. So yield method we will